So I've got 3 news stories that we can talk about. I'm going to throw them out there, and you tell me which one you want to start with. You want to talk about high-resolution, medium format sensors? You want to talk about Nikon NRAW?
NRAW.
NRAW, their RAW.
Did they just announce this?
No. This has been around. And then we can talk about paid firmware upgrades.
Ew.
Which one?
Brother, ew.
Which one do you want to start with?
Let's start with that because I had a gut reaction, it seemed like.
Well, this has been a thing in the ether.
I mean, I know people have paid for things in the past, right? Like Vlog was like a paid upgrade.
$100 upgrade.
Yeah. But then obviously they started shipping cameras with it. But what are you talking about? Firmware upgrades?
Yes. So this would be basically...
What? That doesn't
There's nothing confirmed. This is all speculation, rumor, theory, hypothetical. People just the murmurs, the ether. It's out
throwing
there.
It out there to see if people are willing.
Sony might be charging people for firmware upgrades as part of their business plan to make a little bit extra money.
Might as well just make it a subscription.
That's kind of the
really be a I don't know, what do they say, like a fanboy. Just get you locked in. Why not?
Well, I mean, the video game industry went through this, and people threw a fit for the longest time, but slowly but surely it creeped. Well, that DLC,
I don't know,
paid DLC, that turned into a subscription, pay us every month for your battle pass, for your this, for your that, and that's just how video games are now.
We've all known Adobe to do similar things. I mean, even as far back as like their licensing for their software. Because what you used to be able to do, or what you used to have to do, because there was no cloud, right? You used to buy physical media every year. If you wanted the upgraded version or whatever, you would...
Or you torrented it, and you found the crack, and you pirated.
Right, but...
the Adobe software.
Yeah. So, legally, you would, buy the whatever software. But if you wanted to upgrade, you would pay a smaller amount of money in order to buy the upgrade. So that you could keep like upgrading without having to pay the
You'd get the discount. Yeah.
$5,000 for the whole suite, whatever it was at the time.
I don't think it was ever that much.
It was, well...
I want to say it was like $600, $1,000.
Was it?
Yeah.
I remember...
I mean, it felt like $5,000 back then because of, inflation and everything. Yeah. But I don't think it was ever $5,000. That would...
Who knows?
$1,500? Maybe? We could look it up.
$20,000.
You're talking about like CS5.
It might have been hundreds.
Yeah.
Yes.
CS5.
This was too far back for me to even remember.
CS6.
But what I didn't like obviously was like, when they came out with cloud, they were just like, don't worry, we're just gonna update it. As long as you have a subscription, we're just gonna update everything. It's gonna be seamless. But then what ended up happening, obviously, is you would have the version, and then there was a whole other version of Premiere that they wanted you to download. And I was like, well, why don't you just update this one? No. We want you to download this whole other version with its own quirks.
Yep. We're in 2024 now, and all your old projects, you got to upgrade. Yeah. Nothing's backwards compatible. And their whole system has really bothered me because as much as they traded, the pay for the CD-ROM, they got rid of that. And then they moved to the subscription model, and then they basically kept all the exact same practices where once a year we get the new release and everyone has to update
Which
and
doesn't
upgrade.
Make any sense to me. Because, again, going back to their original 2013, 2014, like, okay, we're going to make cloud, and we're just going to seamlessly, we're going to upgrade it, and it'll be perfect always.
No, it's only gotten worse.
That never happened. I don't know why that never happened. Like, it seems like it would be easier. There's only one Premiere, and we're constantly fixing it to make it the best Premiere possible. Nah, we're just going to make a whole other Premiere that you have to download. Like, what are you doing?
So if Sony or any of these camera companies came out with any kind of paid subscription firmware, that's a hard pass?
I don't know, like, what? Like, it doesn't really make any sense.
They got to make money somehow.
Like, wouldn't you just make another camera at that point? Or is that
Sony would.
Too much?
They got
because
so many
like what are you making then? Like you're just making this sensor that they don't even know like the capability yet.
Well, that's the interesting thing is it's kind of a little bit backwards to think about it. I mean, these corporations, these businesses, they're trying to figure out how they can milk all the money from all the customers, but you're essentially buying a piece of hardware. In Adobe's case, you're not buying a computer that runs Adobe. You're just buying the software to run on your computer. When I'm buying a camera from Sony, I'm buying the hardware. It has physical limitations. The sensor can only do so much. So unless they're going to upgrade the menu and the interface, and I'm going to pay for that, I don't know what they'd be offering. Because they're like, oh, now you can do more megapixels. Well, like, the sensor could have always done that. So now you're just gatekeeping and locking things behind a paywall. That's not good.
Yeah. That's the part where I'm kind of weirded out about it. Because I'm like, why would you charge me the amount that you would have charged me in order to get those features? You know, and then just have them as just like firmware upgrades eventually, right? It's like just pay all up front, just hide it in the cost of the hardware maybe. Because then if you're trying to charge me after the fact, then I'm like, wait, what are you doing?
Now, there are certain situations where I don't really see the benefit of the time it takes to make firmware for something. So the example I would use, lenses that came out 5-10 years ago, still good lenses, sometimes need to be updated. The lens itself needs to be updated for a newer camera. So let's say the G9 Mark II comes out, the Lumix G9 Mark II comes out. An older lens could theoretically be optimized for a newer camera, but what's the motivation? What's the incentive? There's no immediate tangible financial benefit for them to do it because the lens already exists. It's done. Yeah. Why are we going to keep updating in the maintenance? So I see that there's like a realm where I might be willing to pay for something like that, oddly specific.
But is it going to get weird where there's just like teams developing things that are just new for that camera just because? Like a DLC, for instance? So like, you know, like thinking of games that have DLC, it's like, yeah, the core game is there. We're just going to do a whole bunch of like random stuff and then sell it to you. Like, is that what a camera is going to be doing?
Who knows? I hope not.
Like, that would be terrible.
Terrible.
Yeah.
But there's like some institutional
like I don't want a playground, you know, for my, you know, in my like I don't want a sandbox camera. Like that's not what I want. Yeah. Ideally,
I think it's more about updating and maintaining the in a perfect world, I could see paying some small amount to maintain old legacy stuff for a while, because that's the thing that does happen in video games, where a video game will just past its life, and it's basically on life support, and finally they're like, we're going to shut down the servers, we're going to cancel this thing, and people will either start their own or they'll find a way to salvage this cherished gem that they really love. So there are a few things that are like that, where a really old camera or an old lens could still maintain its we were talking recently about Metabones and the speed booster adapter, and how I couldn't get it to work with the G9 Mark II. It's this old adapter for this newer camera. Who's incentivized to connect those dots? I am, as the user of the two pieces, but I don't have access to update the firmware and make it work properly.
Yeah.
So how do you find that balance?
I don't know. It sounds like they don't want to maybe spend the money on like developing hardware as much. They're like, we're going to develop the hardware for a certain amount and then really focus in on like the software side. So they don't have to maybe continually produce camera bodies all that often.
Like anything corporate, it's financially driven, and it's a terrible idea, and they should not do it. We've been very lucky and fortunate to work in an industry that sells you hardware that for the most part works, and you don't have to pay to fix the firmware.
Yeah, that'd be, I don't know. That'd be a little like bait and switch, you know. It's like, oh, I bought this camera. Oh, did you know that you can also get all these other things? It's like, wait, I thought I just bought the camera. It's like, oh, well, you bought the camera, but you didn't buy the upgraded software, the upgraded RAM, the upgraded anything.
The other story of NRAW and Adobe, I'm glad you brought Adobe up, because that's who basically, I don't know, this is kind of about. So Adobe is no longer, they're pausing development, or that's not the right word to say. They're not going to work on incorporating support for NRAW in their products.
Sweet. Why?
Well, because Nikon bought Red, and it's theorized that Nikon cameras are going to get Red code.
Okay. That makes sense, I guess. I don't know. I'm not really keeping up to date on Nikon. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I don't know. So many people seemingly were very upset that they're like they were shooting on red before, and now they're even like, is this even a good, like, should I even stay with red? You know, now that like that whole acquisition's taken place, like, is it an even good, you know, who knows? It's like, are they going to take them to the promised land, or are they going to sink the ship? Like, who knows?
Who knows? Who knows? But I just think it's an interesting point, because no matter what is said or what is done, and if you're a Nikon shooter, you probably will get red code, I imagine, based on this kind of news from Adobe. If they're not going to incorporate NRAW support, well, then what's going to happen? Because if you bought this camera thinking, hey, I can shoot RAW on my Nikon, and then that's not an option in like one of the most popular editing suites that exists, you're kind of stuck. And that's really annoying. Well, so don't buy things based on empty promises of firmware.
Well, even when the GH6 first came out, there was a few months where taking a RAW photo, like you couldn't edit the RAW photo. You had to wait until, you know, Adobe and Lightroom and everybody had the ability to even touch their new RAW. So, like, there is those times where it's like, all right, you feel frustrated. Maybe you're like, I bought this new camera and I can't even use it, you know? So
what if you found out that you bought a new camera and you're like, oh, I just got to wait for Adobe to embrace it. Yeah. And then Adobe says, yeah, we're not going to work on that one anymore.
It'd be extremely frustrating, but
I'd kind of go, wait, well, then what are you going to do? Yeah. I'd want to know what's the new solution? What's the new answer? What do you got for me?
Yeah. That's why you stay away from those kinds of cameras, man.
But when you buy something, you're buying what it is in its current point in time. There's a lot of stuff that people sell you with the promises of what's to come. Even the GH6 did this, I'm pretty sure, where they said ProRes RAW over HDMI would be supported sometime in the near future. That's what Lumix said. And I said, okay, well, I don't really care about that. Yeah. So I'm just going to buy the camera that I want, and I'm not going to worry about that feature. Right. And if it comes, great. I'm glad it's there for the people who have it. But if you buy a camera expecting that feature to be unlocked or released at some point in time in the future, yeah, I would hope they fulfill their promise, but a lot of times they're not going to.
Yeah. I know there are
complications. Yeah. Oh, we couldn't figure it out. Oh.
It's like I do... Like, there are those features, right? They're only unlocked when you have, like, an external recorder, let's say. And that's fine. Like, but that's something I know going into it, right? It's like, okay, yeah, like, I'm planning on not shooting those, you know, anyways. So I don't really need it. But, yeah, I don't know how I'd feel if I purchased something and then after the fact they were like, oh, by the way, we added all these features. If you'd like to access those, then you're going to have to, like, pay us more money. I'd feel kind of awkward about it. But I'd still probably pay. Who knows? If I needed it, you know? Like, how much are we talking? Like, how much is the upgrade?
I don't know, probably $10 a month.
$100, you know?
Well, that was Vlog.
Oh, you're saying, like, if it was a subscription as opposed to just, like, a...
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah, Vlog was $100, right? So, was it enough for, like, was it a substantial enough upgrade to get, like, a stop more in dynamic range?
You know, on the GH5... Oh, was it? Because it was still Vlog Lite. It wasn't even Vlog. It was Vlog Lite. And that was all kind of funky and kind of broken. And I feel like they learned their lesson. I hope they did and realized, oh, that's kind of dumb to segment the market where some people have it and some people don't. I think they've realized, no, we should just have the same features for everybody in these cameras. At least Lumix figured that out. And even Canon and Sony for the most part, and Fuji and all of them, they're Nikon, they give you the profiles that you would expect, and they're not segmenting them off and putting them behind paywalls or anything anymore. That was not a very good look, I don't think, at the time. I don't think a lot of people bought Vlog in that state. No. They're like, what? No?
Well, it's kind of like buying an adapter. You're just like, well, let me see how this works. Like, I'm pretty sure that's the people who are buying Vlog. Like, people who are interested in, like, dipping their toes in to, like, what that workflow might be like, you know? So... Because clearly it wasn't like a, I don't know, cinema camera, one that you would actually, you know, use a Vlog for.
But. Yeah, but I want to say that around that time, Sony had S-Log 1 and 2 and maybe even 3 at that point. Sony had log profiles. And Canon had, I think, a couple on their, you know, regular cameras. Maybe that's not true. Maybe they were also dabbling and keeping that reserved around that time. There was this really weird...
I've never liked S-Log 2.
Yeah.
So,
but there was this weird time where Sony was giving people log profiles and all the other camera companies were like, well, that's for the professionals only. And we're like, what do you mean? Just put it in the camera. Because you clearly can. And that was the thing with Vlog Lite, was that you could unlock it with the app.
Right.
Do you remember this?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, there was a loophole where you could get it for free, basically.
If you just paired the GH5 with the app, it would unlock Vlog L for you for a period of time. And then they patched that real quick.
Yeah.
But during that week, there was a sweet spot where it was like, oh, I got it now. Hooray.
Yeah.
So the camera was clearly capable of doing it.
But even then, in those scenarios, because I know we've tested like the original, was it the Vlog at for the GH6, there was like the second base ISO, but it just made everything super noisy. So we were like, why even shoot at this?
Are you talking about dynamic range boost?
Yeah, the dynamic range boost. So it's like, what are we doing here? It's like you're giving me this like ability, but it's making my footage look worse. So why? What am I doing here, right? It's like, why are you even allowing me to do this?
So some person was mentioning in the comments, they were saying they liked the GH6 having that ISO 2000 compared to the G9 Mark II ISO 500.
Yeah.
And this person was a little confused, I think, because they're talking about dynamic range boost, which is, you can run the G9 Mark II at ISO 2000 if you want. Go for it. But the GH6, the only way dynamic range boost would work is if you ran it at ISO 2000, which is incredibly noisy. So we just stopped doing that.
Yeah.
Because why am I going to boost my dynamic range just for incredibly noisy footage?
Yeah, I don't.
I'd rather run it clean and have a little bit less dynamic range.
Yeah.
But not a problem anymore in the G9 Mark II. But
And what we've noticed is, well, you don't even need to shoot Vlog necessarily if it's a completely controlled environment, and then you get extremely clean footage, extremely, accurate colors, and you could do that, and it's just baked in already. So there's that as well. And then, of course, it's obviously using the right tool for the job, but also knowing the right profile for the job. So
speaking of the right tool for the job, would the right tool for the job ever be a Sony developed 247 megapixel medium format sensor?
Could be. Like in my mind, I'm like, yeah, there'd be some sweet portraits probably, but.
So Sony has announced this sensor. They have it for sale. It's industrial rated, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything.
For photo or video?
It's just a sensor you can buy off the shelf. So most companies now buy their sensors from Sony. I think, oh gosh, I don't want to say any of them because I'll inevitably get it wrong. But a lot of cameras have Sony sensors in them. And so if you were so inclined, if you were a camera company, you could go buy a 247 megapixel sensor from Sony, medium format, and you could develop a camera with it.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's... I would love to know the file sizes of these.
The horizontal resolution, I believe, is over 19,000 pixels wide.
Holy moly. That's incredible.
Specs.
Are there any image examples?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, this is brand new.
That's incredible. Yeah, I mean, have you ever shot with anything like with high megapixel count? Like
No.
above 50, like the A7R, like what, 5, 4, 5?
What did I shoot that was incredibly high megapixel? I want to say the R5. I took pictures with the R5, and that's a 50 megapixel sensor.
It's insane.
It's slow to process.
Yeah,
at the time,
file sizes are huge.
this was 4 years ago or so. So computers get faster and it's a little bit easier to edit. But that was the biggest problem at the time is that, the more megapixels you cram in there, the longer it takes to edit the photo, which is usually the part you're trying to speed up.
Right, which now
get through these.
So thankful, like we were talking about Lightroom and how now you can edit locally off of your drive, so you don't have to like make basically a duplicate of every file that you're importing to Lightroom. So editing those kinds of files, those big ones, make it a lot easier. But I don't know, I've never necessarily needed that many megapixels. I'm not cropping in that much, maybe. It does make certain aspects, like macro photography, it makes that way better. I don't know like how much macro photography you've dabbled in, but obviously like higher megapixel count, great for macro photography, especially with cramming as much detail as you can. But yeah, anything above like 50, like what are we doing here? No, but yeah, medium format, I'd be interested in shooting medium format eventually.
Well, you'll probably have the opportunity here in less than a month because I'm gonna shoot medium format for the photo shoot we're doing coming up, and I'll let you play around with it. We can have some fun because it's
some
a
Hasselblad. Is that what you're getting your hands on?
Fuji, the GFX.
Oh, nice.
The GFX 100. That's the plan, just to have the resolution because it's a print project, which I just want the kind of best for that kind of work. Most of the time we're doing video stuff, but if we're going to do a photo shoot, I want to do it well. Although I was going to show you, this is a print photo from my, that's from the GH6.
That looks incredible.
So that's 25 megapixels for the cover of a magazine.
Photo or video still?
That's a photo.
Okay.
Gosh,
Like,
could you imagine?
wow.
Oh, that's a screen grab. Woo.
Yeah, it looks great.
Yeah, people, I don't know. There's always a time and a place for more resolution, and then sometimes less is fine as well. It just...
Are these also photos?
No, those are mine. Just the cover. Nice. So...
Epic.
That was a situation where they were like, "Hey, do you have a good photo for the cover? We're running this story." I said, "Yeah, I can send you the original resolution." So I pulled that up, and you're always going to be limited by the final print. You could send someone a 100 megapixel file, and they could print it on a toaster, and it would look terrible.
Right.
So I've ran it back in the day doing banner work. Like photos for banners. You're like, oh, I'm going to send you this incredibly detailed, like super megapixel. And then you look at the print and go, the pixels are like this big on the print, you know?
Well, they say
terrible.
All you need really is like 5 megapixels. Like 5 megapixels is like more than enough usually for most things.
I don't know. I shot 12 megapixels with the Sony a7S III, and that was not enough.
Don't zoom in. Whatever you do, do not zoom in. It's like you got to be 1,000% confident in your frame.
Let me just look at this photo from way back over here. Because I'd be on my screen or my phone, I'd be like, that doesn't look right. This looks terrible.
It also depends like at what distance you're viewing, right?
Correct.
So like people say like a billboard, and like that's what I know from a billboard. It's like 5 megapixels is like
plenty,
good enough,
because they're viewing it from the highway, driving by, going, "Oh, it's that
which
campaign."
At the same size is about you looking at your phone at a distance, right? It's like it's about the same size as a billboard would be. So it's all relative.
Yeah, but how do people look at magazines? How do they look at books?
Like this.
That's
Put it right in their face.
Yeah, their phone too is pretty close.
But even then, right? It's like you're looking at like pixels at that point, or like your screen. You're looking at individual. It's like, how detailed can you be before it's just pixels?
Yeah,
like of the screen of the material you're looking at.
Well, that's the problem with the VR headsets right now is that you can see the actual pixels. They're not Retina yet,
right?
But once they are, you're going to need that resolution.
Like your
to
image
fill.
could be more like higher resolution than what you're actually viewing it on, and then that could be the issue too. Or what you were saying, like the print itself could be, less. It's not going to do your photo justice, basically.
There's always the lowest common denominator in any workflow. There's always the point of failure where, that part is only 12 megapixels, so the rest of it doesn't really matter. Or that part is only 8-bit, so the rest of it kind of doesn't matter. Now, there's room to work around that. Sometimes you want more color information when you're color correcting, and it doesn't matter if the final thing is 8-bit. But in general, there's a lot of times where you're going to be limited by some other factor you don't have control over. We talk about this all the time with color grading, because you always want me to apply that stupid LUT in Premiere, the gamma, QuickTime gamma
Apple
correction.
LUT. Yeah.
But that's assuming you know what the person's watching the content on, and you don't. Someone could be watching on their TV.
Every one of my clients has an Apple product, which, like even looking into that, we should talk about that, because I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily know. Maybe it was about 3 years ago, where people were starting to realize that their Premiere has a different gamma than like what your phone has or any screen you're using to watch. Playback could be your TV, could be different browsers that you're running, Firefox or Safari or Chrome. And essentially Apple has a much more contrasty gamma, much higher gamma than you would be using in, I guess, Premiere. So when you're looking at your Premiere edit, it looks really nice, contrasty and everything, and then you export and then it looks like faded and washed out. So I guess, what we're talking about is Adobe heard this and was like, don't worry, we got a fix for it. We have a LUT. It's a gamma correction LUT that you can apply to your video upon export, and then it makes it look as if, it was still like, what you had in your Premiere timeline. That's how it'll look upon export, but only for Apple devices, basically, because Premiere, the way that gamma was made was for broadcast, essentially. So whatever you made and exported, it would look good for broadcast. But as we know, not many people use broadcast. A lot of people are consuming it via the web, and we don't know where they're watching it from, right? And for me, I pretty much, like we were talking about, I pretty much know who's watching my content, or at least, the clients I work with. And I know if they're going to look at it, on an iPhone, it's like, well, might as well put this LUT on there for you.
I look at it as playing a game of whack-a-mole. You're trying to solve one problem and then creating more, and those ripple effects you never know and track down. I think there was at one point we exported the same video and we watched it in QuickTime, we watched it in VLC, we pulled it up on YouTube, and we watched it in Finder.
Yeah.
And in all 4 places on the exact same computer, it looked completely different. Now, not completely different. It looked slightly, subtly different.
Because
contrast,
each
saturation.
program has their own gamma, which is ridiculous. And you can go down that rabbit hole and figure out why that is, because it is based on original broadcast, and then a lot of people who made their own ways to view content or view video basically have different gamma curves, which is essentially just more contrast in the image.
And they're not as popular anymore, but I remember for a while people were trying to sell, get the calibration camera thing for your monitor.
Yeah,
calibrate
like
your monitor with this special device,
kind of thing,
$300 to calibrate your monitor so you know that you're editing accurate color. And you know what? Your Aunt Tina at home has some Samsung TV with smart motion and auto contrast and cinema saturation.
Oh, yeah.
And you watch it there and you go, this looks terrible.
Yeah.
And you watched it in your little world, not realizing where it was going to end up. And once you have that realization, you realize, oh, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to do the best I can. I stop worrying about those extra little things to make it look good for me, because ultimately it's going to get ruined somewhere else.
Right.
So I'd rather focus on the efficiency and streamlining, and God forbid everything gets this LUT. Oops, I forgot to do it on this one thing. Oh, let me redo it.
But that's where like the scopes don't necessarily lie, though. That's the
true.
one thing.
That's true.
So as long as you are looking at your scopes, especially for like monitor calibration type stuff, you can still use your scopes. You can see if colors are aligning where they should, and that again goes back to the color checker, which we shoot a ton of those color checkers. If you don't have that in your workflow, definitely add it, because it is that like extra 1% of making sure that your footage looks as accurate as possible.
Right, because those scopes, that's a mathematical thing. It's not a subjective, what does it look like?
Yeah.
It's, oh no, it's this value on a chart.
Yeah, and it's, again, for exposure reading, you just look at like the luma, your waveform with the luma, and you're looking at exactly the value of where your highlights should be, where your midtones, where everything should be. So that necessarily like shouldn't be an issue, because I know some people, when they're color correcting, if their screen brightness is too bright or too dark, like that throws off completely what they're doing. But if you have your scopes there, like where skin tone should be falling, and that's how you maintain consistency. And of course, using like masks as well. So like using opacity masks to like pinpoint what exactly you're looking at, so that when you look at your scopes, it's only that portion that you masked out. At least that's what I do a lot. Like for interviews, let's say, if I want to make sure the skin brightness is the same between my like wide angle and my close up, because you never really know. Like you can dial in the same settings on each camera, but depending on the lens, depending on the focal length, whatever it is, depending on the ND filter you're using, it can vary slightly. And I mean, we've gotten to a point now where we've done production so much where just fixing that extra 1% is a huge deal, because everything else is like, you're just so used to, creating the set and, building the camera and all that stuff. And then it's that last little bit of like, all right, I'm in the edit bay, I need to make it perfect. So yeah, like masking out a portion of somebody's skin just to make sure on the waveform that it matches the wide and the close up. like do it because it matters, you know, and it'll make it stand out.
Yeah,
as looking good.
Got to get through all the basic stuff to get to the final point where you're really nitpicking your own work to find that true quality perfection. Some of the times it's the differences that only you see.
Yeah.
You know, other people might
that's
not notice.
What I love about it, though.
Yeah.
Making sure that it's like the technical precision of this art. Like that's what I enjoy about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we kind of went off topic.
That was it. That was all. That was all the topics.
All right, cool.
I don't know if there was anything else.
Sweet.
We need to talk about. I just need to load up the little app to where I can end this thing. Anything else? Any final thoughts?
Not news-wise, but I definitely want to. We should do more of these. Definitely less news that I haven't read because I feel like
I like that because then you can ask me questions. If we both know, we're just telling each other stuff we already know.
No, but I would like to.
So did you see this article? I actually did. I did read that.
Man.
Oh yeah, I know all about it too.
We should start. What were those comments? The comments they like us talking about what cameras, just production in general. Like, do they care about photography or just video?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Okay. A little bit of both. I think.
Because I feel like we dabbled in so much over the years. It's easier for us to talk about video because that's primarily what we do. But.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as they just go hand in hand. Okay. Every time I'm doing a video, I'm taking some kind of photo.
Yeah, or, I mean, I appreciate that, like, the way we shoot, it's very easy to take screen grabs from our videos because, like, I don't know, we frame things up, like almost everything is framed up. I feel like when I start shooting, I'm pretty much framed up ready for that shot. So everything, I try to make everything as usable as possible. But yeah, it's a lot of like photo in video. If you know how to take photos, right? It's like that's where I started. I started taking photos, just learning composition, and then obviously like video came easily after you have composition. So yeah, we'll see.
We can talk about whatever.
Right.
I just figure we talk about, I don't know, try and find things that people care about or be curious to know.
Let's start another one of these. Let's do another one.